Hey guys, welcome back to Recovery Captured, hosted by me, Shannon Louise, certified recovery coach and self-verified addict. I want to welcome our newcomers as well as our OGs. And thank you guys so much for an amazing first season. It was so successful and I had no idea it would be. And I got to thank you guys for it because you guys helped share it, repost it, and even dedicated some of your time to be on the podcast. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate the love. And before we get into our first episode, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge those who are still sick and suffering, and for those who we have lost. Because on January 8th, 2022, my brother-in-law, Justin Irick, lost his battle to addiction. I would like to honor him by dedicating this season to him. Justin was a giant love bug and very compassionate and kind. You know, and thinking back on these last few months, I've realized how little we know about ourselves and our connection with others. Even a little amount of time spent with someone, your presence has changed and impacted that person's path. Justin's love and energy was so strong. I really don't know if he knows how many lives he has truly touched or what impact he has had on so many people. You know, with that being said, if you or someone you know may be struggling, please seek help. It may be a challenge to find resources to help you take that first step, but we are here to help. Just so you know, there are many free and anonymous hotlines out there. And if you need extra help or finding those resources, I can help you. Lastly, I just wanted to read a blurb from Justin's Obituary so you can picture his beauty. He would light up a room with his smile and twinkling eyes, and he greeted everyone with a big hug that was often too long in the best way possible. So Justin, you are greatly missed and will never be forgotten, and may you be the next cardinal that I see. Thanks, guys. So our first episode is with Hope. This girl is absolutely amazing. I met her when she first came into the rooms, and she has grown so much. This episode is going to be about her story, and she is a competitive bodybuilder, absolutely gorgeous. And I don't want to give any more away. Like, her story is so good and it has so much juicy details about getting into exercise, especially in early recovery. So, without further ado, welcome to our first episode of Season 2. All right, tell us the goods. Give us a little intro, who you are, what you're in recovery for, how long you've been in recovery, and give us a fun fact.
So my name is Hope, and I am in recovery from all psychoactive, mind-altering substances, so alcohol and drugs. My sobriety date is July 21st, 2018, so coming up, the universe willing, on 4 years in July.
Wow.
And a fun fact about me is that I'm a competitive bodybuilder.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I love watching you grow.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's been a fun process. I remember when you came into the rooms and seeing you there, and then going to the competition last year and seeing you there. It was cool transformation, you know, a little travel.
I'm sure I was a mess in the beginning. I always try to think about like what I must have looked like back then. I can only imagine.
Right.
Especially like being in recovery for a few years and then meeting new people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in my job, I'm also a therapist. So I work with individuals who are actively using, who are in the early stages of recovery, and just seeing like, it's just so noticeable, you know.
It really is. But Have you worked with someone that is now in long-term recovery? So then you've seen them at their worst, and now you've seen them at least a few months sober and stuff?
Yeah, I have clients that I've worked with for over a year. Most of the individuals that I work with are parents involved with DCF.
Mm-hmm.
So they've had some type of intervention because of their own addiction issues as parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I've witnessed, like, I had this one client really struggling, couldn't stay sober from opiates. Kid came into custody, and then she got the support she needed through therapy and other supports out there, and had this amazing transformation where she was able to get her child back. DCF closed their case. You know, when she first started, she was pretty helpless and hopeless. You know, I don't think she thought that that was achievable. Well, I know she didn't, because she would say that. And I have a few clients like that I still work with who've, like, I've seen them throughout this process, and it's pretty amazing.
That's awesome. It must be amazing to see that transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Like that light clicks, you know?
Yeah, it, like, to see someone change not only physically but, like, emotionally and spiritually, just all over. It's a completely different human. You know, there's lots of literature in recovery programs that talks about how, like, you don't even recognize the person. They're completely different.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
Even in 12 steps, you see it,
Right.
you see it all the time. It's
Right.
pretty phenomenal. And I think most people think that recovery is unachievable, or, like, there's such a small percentage of people who actually get it. But when you see it happen,
It's awesome.
mm-hmm.
Did you think that recovery or sobriety was achievable?
Intellectually, yes. And I'll explain why. But, you know, I'm 42. So this last period of sobriety started when I was 38. So I had about 20 years of use. And during those 20 years, the longest period of sobriety I had was 18 months through a 12-step group. But because I wasn't honest in my work that I did, I relapsed. And although during some of that time I was a substance abuse professional, so I've worked in the substance abuse treatment field for over 15 years. So I knew intellectually it was. I just didn't know how to get there. And I tried many different ways. So I would say, like, oh, I'm not going to drink. And alcohol was, for the last portion of my use, was the issue. I got sober from drugs a long time ago. Alcohol is more socially acceptable,
Yes.
right? I'd much rather say I drink than I snort heroin. So I figured I would keep up with the use of the alcohol.
Right.
And I would just say, like, oh, I'm only going to drink on the weekends, or I'm only going to drink at night,
Yeah.
or with friends, socially. And every time it was a shit show. So it's like, I just didn't know how I was going to achieve it or how I could do it. And then this last time, when I went into a 12-step group and actually worked the program they offer and took some suggestions, was I able to get... I mean, this is the longest I've ever been sober.
Right.
Since I picked up drugs and alcohol at the age of 18.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's surreal at times.
Yeah.
Particularly what I think is surreal is that people talk about getting to a place where you never think about using. And I have that.
Yeah.
Like to walk down the aisle at the grocery store where there's alcohol.
Yeah.
And it's not even a thought, or to go through something painful in sobriety, which I absolutely have in the last almost 4 years, and to not even think about using drugs or alcohol is... that part you don't think is achievable.
Right.
Because I hear clients say all the time, or people that I know that I'm going to think about this for the rest of my life. Fuck that. If that's the type of life that I'm going to have, and I think that's the type of life a lot of people think that they're going to have, what's the point?
Right. Absolutely.
I couldn't imagine suffering like that.
I couldn't either. Now, do you ever have cravings?
Mm-mm.
None.
Never. I have not. I don't know what it was when I came back into recovery that what happened. I was so desperate when I walked into a 12-step meeting, just cried. I remember going to my first few meetings and just crying the entire time, and just knowing at the core of my being that it had to be over. Not because there was any consequences externally. I didn't lose a job or get a DUI or lose my children. I was actually a pretty well-respected, and am still to this day, substance abuse professional. So externally things appeared to be good, but internally I was a wreck and knew that it was harming me spiritually, and it was corrupting some of my morals and values, which would have eventually had external consequences.
Right.
And so I walked into that meeting, and for whatever reason, I was so desperate and willing to do whatever it took that I did the work in a way that I do not get cravings. I do not think about it. And I don't think I don't think that says I had any less of an issue than the person who drank all day, every day.
Right. Right. So what was the changing factor, or whatever, the changing factor between your first try at recovery and this one? You mentioned that desperation.
Mm-hmm. I think it was the spiritual development. Mm-hmm. So the first time that I was in a 12-step program, my mentor in recovery said, fake it till you make it, as far as this concept of a higher power or this universal presence, which is how I like to look at it. And that does not work for me.
Right.
And it didn't work for me because my mentor said that, but they didn't tell me how to develop really a connection, a spiritual connection, or how to explore spiritual principles. Sure, they have a couple prayers that you say, or say, get on your knees and pray.
Right.
What the fuck does that mean?
Who am I praying to?
Exactly. And what am I saying?
Right.
Not our Father. I mean, I love the prayer, our Father who art in heaven, but like, I can't talk in that way to develop a connection with something talking that way.
Right.
So this time I was lucky to have a mentor who really taught me like how to develop that connection and to like be myself when praying. So I would swear and talk to however I get it. I wouldn't even get on my knees because I don't even want to do that. But I would just be like, oh my fucking God, help me. I'm going to like lose my shit, or I need some support, or whatever it may be. I would just be myself.
Yeah.
And I started to learning about different spiritual principles and concepts, like doing work. Recovery is work, right?
Yes.
So like learning about meditation and like they say meditate, in the 10th or 11th step. What does that even mean? It doesn't tell you how to meditate in the book. So I had to like go and learn how to do that. So I like learned about different spiritual centers, and this mentor I had was really into tarot and crystals. Okay. And so I started doing that and like learning about universal energy, and I became a Reiki practitioner.
Really?
And now I'm a Reiki master.
Really?
Yes. That's part of another thing that I do that I don't talk much about. But, and I just developed this understanding and connection with what connects us all is love.
Yeah.
That's what that universal energy is. And like really feeling connected to it. And that was the shift that happened for me, because then I'm able to be more present with myself and others. And it allows me to have hope and purpose, really.
Right. Right. Do you still swear at your higher power, or do you still meditate? Or, I mean, you're a few years into it. Do you take the time to still do that stuff?
It just looks different for me now. So when I first started doing it and I was pretty desperate, I was doing it all the time.
Yeah.
Kind of like I was going to meetings all the time.
Right.
And over the last like year and a half particularly with the issues with the pandemic,
Yeah.
my engagement in those types of things has shifted a little. But I do have practices where I pray as needed, and I will swear if I need to, depending on how I'm feeling in the moment. I, weekly try to connect with tarot and like do a reading for myself, or if like there's something that I'm not sure how to approach it, I'll do a tarot reading. I really find a lot of connection with that. And so I'll use that for inner guidance. I practice Reiki on myself or other people, which is a way to connect spiritually.
Yep.
And I'm always interested in like maybe expanding that, but given like, and I think bodybuilding is very spiritual too. And that has become what has been my outlet emotionally and spiritually over the last 2 years. So
Yeah. Well, it's also a meditative state, right? Meditation doesn't always mean sitting down and with your little fingertips touching and oming and stuff. That's the idea that I had when I first went in. But that's not anything like meditation. You can be walking, you can be reading, or whatever gets you in the moment, kind of grounds you, and I feel like finding it in your passion makes it easier to accomplish.
Yeah, and the act of meditation is really mindfulness, just being present, right?
Right.
So like a practice that I found really helpful early on in my sobriety to be mindful was I would just be in the shower and I would concentrate on the water hitting my body. Yep. What was the temperature? How does it feel? I would look at a droplet of water and follow it as it ran down my skin. Whoever does that. Most people, when they're fully in the shower, they're not thinking about their experience showering.
Right.
They're thinking about what they're doing afterwards.
Yeah.
Our minds are always wandering all the time.
Right.
Right now, I'm thinking about my lift at 4:00. No, I'm just kidding. But
I don't blame you.
We're always just thinking of other things. So yeah, the act of weightlifting and bodybuilding is a mindful practice. I do believe that.
Yeah, when I first started meditating, because I had no idea, I would do the 5 senses. So what are 5 things I see? What are 4 things that I hear? 3 things that I smell, 2 things I taste, or you know what I mean? And I just count down, and that really helped me get grounded and center myself, especially when I'm in like the heat of the moment, because I got to take a step back. I can't deal with things under pressure or when I'm angry or upset. I got to take a minute for myself, and that was always a great way to connect, I mean, it also made it more enjoyable to meditate because I always tried the quiet meditation or like guided meditation versus engaging in hobbies. But so what else was it like before your recovery started?
Miserable.
A shit show?
Yes. Just existing, not living. That's what it was for, 38 years. Like I had a really rough childhood. It was awful. A lot of abuse and trauma. Addiction runs through my entire family. Even to this day, I'm the only member of my immediate family that's sober. Everybody has struggled. It's a generational, pervasive thing in my family. And, growing up with that and then being a young woman and struggling, I dropped out of high school, was homeless. Then I started selling drugs. And there was just no hope for anything. that I was going to achieve anything. I knew I had potential. My grandparents who raised me for part of my life always told me that, but I didn't believe that. What does that even mean anyway? Okay, I can do a lot of things. It doesn't mean they're going to happen. I just struggled for a very long time.
Yeah.
And during the earlier years, my early 20s, I had a severe heroin and crack cocaine addiction. That's when I was interstate drug trafficking. And once I got sober from drugs, like my life got better, but I wasn't actually sober. I was drinking. Mm-hmm. It's hard with alcohol because it's so socially acceptable.
It really is.
And it's everywhere. And so like I started working in the substance abuse treatment field while actively drinking, not thinking I had a drinking problem. Yep. And slowly started learning that it was an issue. But like the environment and the places I was working, that other people would drink, so it kind of was an excuse or like justified why I was doing it, you know? Sure. So the earlier years were really difficult. And then, in my 30s, things got better. Like I was drinking, but I went to college. I was working in the field. I started to develop I don't want to say name for myself. So in the state of Vermont, I'm considered this sounds so ridiculous saying this, content expert for the intersection of addiction and child protection. So I have because of my experience working in the field, I have a lot of knowledge about child protection issues, the abuse and neglect of children because of parental substance use. And so I've done trainings across the state. I used to teach a foundations training for new DCF social workers. I actually hold a contract with DCF to do assessments for parents without insurance. Like I last week had a meeting where I'm going to be the substance abuse professional on a human trafficking task force.
Wow.
Yeah, for the state of Vermont, which is
congratulations.
Thank you. A pretty big deal. I'm excited about that. And I'm going to be part of their outreach and training. So I'll be doing trainings on human trafficking and addiction. So like all of these things were building on itself.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, like, because people put so much weight into like my addiction is only an issue if it's affecting me negatively externally. Mm-hmm. If I don't get a DUI, if I don't lose my girlfriend or husband or whatever, partner, if I don't lose my house, if I don't lose my children, then I'm a functional addict or alcoholic, which is the most asinine, those two things don't even go together, right. Functioning and alcoholic.
Yeah.
It infuriates me when people say it, but it's also like ignorance, right? And in our culture, we want to justify the use of alcohol.
Yep.
You have your fucking soccer moms with their T-shirts that say, I'm so stressed out, I get to drink a glass of wine, or the little baby wearing a onesie that says, my mom drinks wine, or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? Yes.
Wine culture.
It's awful. Especially even during this pandemic, like all of a sudden alcohol is a essential necessity.
Right.
Where you can get it delivered to your home.
Yeah,
I wish they were fucking doing that back in the day when I was drinking.
Right? Or like socially acceptable with weed and like buying edibles and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, where the hell is this?
Not that I want to do those things, but
no,
they could have made it easier.
Right. It crossed my mind. Or like, boba tea.
Yeah.
The big straws. I'm like, where was that when I was snorting cocaine?
You could have done a whole half gram in one shot.
That's right.
Easily.
Would have got the job done.
So, I mean, my point being is like throughout those years, not everything was horrible, but it still was. Like I just felt morally and emotionally and spiritually bankrupt. Like I didn't have any hope or purpose. I didn't understand, like, what was the purpose of all of this? What was I going to do with my life? How was I going to... I didn't even feel connected to myself and other people. You cannot be under the influence of any substance.
Yeah.
You are spiritually cut off. That's the exact opposite of mindfulness.
Yep.
So what I've come to learn in my recovery, that, like, alcohol and drugs create a false sense of spirituality or spiritual connection. So everything I wanted to have, peace, contentment, connection with myself, being okay with myself and happy with myself, and like feeling content and connected to other people if I used alcohol or drugs. I got it for a small, minute second or minute, and then it all fell apart because I'm the type of person that goes balls to the wall into oblivion every time. Can't just keep that sweet spot, right?
No.
So everything I was looking for in sobriety, like what I was looking for in the drugs and alcohol, I have found in sobriety is my point.
Kind of filled that void, right? That void, that spiritual void that was always there, but we filled it with booze and drugs.
Mm-hmm. Or tried to.
Right. Now, did you get into counseling and stuff because of your childhood?
I don't know. Like, how I got into this work is really interesting because it's never what I envisioned for myself.
Okay.
I mean, I was the type of person that would change what I wanted to do all the time. Like one time I wanted to be a inner city missionary, okay, for the Christian church.
Yeah.
I'm the least religious person there is. So that was not happening. It sounded really cool, saving the troubled youth of America, but no, that's not what I was meant to be. Or I wanted to be an archaeologist another time. You know what I mean? Like I was all over the place. But when I got sober from drugs, I was working. I don't even know how this happened. I just like applied for a job at the Howard Center. They had a public inebriate program in St. Albans where if you're drunk and you get picked up by the police, they bring you to be kind of like Act 1 in Burlington.
Okay.
And I, on a whim, applied for it. I don't know why. I was just looking for some extra money, and I got the job. And so I started babysitting drunk people, basically, at night. And then there was an opening at Act 1 in Burlington. So I applied for that job. And because I was already in with the Howard Center, I got that job. And I did that for 3 years. And then I went to work at Lund, which I have children. There's a whole another story with that. And I lived at Lund when I was pregnant with my son, LeBron. That's where I got sober from drugs from. Oh. So I had a connection to Lund. I went to go work there, and I worked there for 11 years.
Wow.
Before I left 2 years ago to go into private practice.
Good for
so
you.
It kind of just built off one another. And then, like, I happen to be good at what I do. Like, I kind of had, like, a pretty rough, like I was going to Harlem and packing drugs in my vagina, you know what I mean? And then bringing them back. Like, it's not something everyone does. And so, like, I have this ability to, like, connect with people in a different way than someone who maybe just went to college. Right? And I'm authentic with people. I just say it, I just say it how it is. Many of my counseling sessions involve swearing between me, not at each other, but, that's the dialogue we use. Yeah. Like, I'm just good at it. So that's how I got into it. And it's something that I love doing. Even though there are days I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore because it's really difficult.
Yeah.
I'm good at it and I really do love it. So
do you bring a lot of it home?
No, I used to. But I've learned what is hard now is because I work with clients for a long period of time. If I have a client that relapses and dies, and that has happened a couple times this year, that is sad. Yeah. So that's been the thing that I've just been trying to deal with recently, especially knowing, like, as a person in recovery, that there's a way out. Mm-hmm. And it's complex anyway. Like, really anyone that uses any substance is at risk of fatal overdose because of the synthetic fentanyl. Mm-hmm. You can't do any drug without having that be a possibility. So it's not like, it just is the nature of the game, unfortunately.
It is. And
it's happening way too frequently. And that's been hard because I've had a few people die over the last year. But so that sometimes comes home. But besides that, no.
No, you can separate it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my clients are highly functioning and are sober and living life. My work with them is helping them navigate recovery and just make their recovery a better, more fulfilling experience. Mm-hmm. Or, talking about their jobs or their relationships. Mm-hmm. Those are all benign in my, in in the range of things I could be talking about.
Right, right. Now, when you figured out that you were an alcoholic and you're doing your job telling them, like, these are the steps you got to do, you know what I mean? Like, you're helping another alcoholic or a drug addict get clean. Like, what was going through your mind at that time?
Well, it's super hypocritical.
Absolutely.
I was able to justify it, and I'm going to tell you why. So in the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, for those who don't know, how they diagnose you with mental health or substance use issues, when they came out with the DSM-5, which was like right around the time that I relapsed after having 18 months of sobriety, there's this caveat in diagnosing someone that, so let's say for a period of time, I meet the criteria for having an issue with alcohol. Mm-hmm. I could, in theory, drink 3 years later and not meet those criteria and not have an issue with alcohol, which is very different than what 12-step programs say.
Right.
Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic.
Yep.
So I allowed that to justify it. I was like, all right, I've been sober 18 months. I can just drink, here and there, and I'll be fine. So I did. And then a lot of the criteria for a substance use issue is based on external factors.
Yep.
Except tolerance and withdrawal and cravings. But it's like, oh, did it affect your work in any way or your relationships? Well, no, nobody was complaining about my alcohol use because my partner was drinking the same way I was.
Right.
Right? Or my friends drank too. No one ever said anything about it. Or it wasn't affecting my job in the way that I thought it was. So I was able to you can rationalize anything.
Absolutely, especially when we're protecting our addiction.
Yes.
100%, yes.
So it absolutely was an issue. At the time, there were ways it was affecting my life that I did not want to admit. Of course, I went to work hungover and didn't perform my job as good as I should have.
Right.
I absolutely drove under the influence of alcohol during that time. So it was a problem, but I was able to skew it in my head to fit what I wanted to see. Mm-hmm. It was so hypocritical.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you did your first 18 months of sobriety, were you working a 12-step program?
Yes. I actually went through the steps, was sponsoring people and everything.
Yeah, so you have the knowledge of the 12-step program,
mm-hmm.
as well as the DSM-5, and you still chose to ignore what we say in the 12-step and still went with your medical background.
Yeah, because I wanted to drink.
Yeah.
I was going to make it suit my needs. But I'll tell you what, it never left me. And what I think was what I'm very grateful for is, well, two things. One, because of my experience with 12 steps, I could never completely close off what I had learned. It was even during those years that I drank, and I was out for 10 years after that 18 months. I knew at the core of my being it was a problem. Mm. But I wasn't ready to address it or willing to. And then the first time I was in the 12 steps program, after I did my third step, I got this tattoo on my arm that says surrender. And then after I did my 12th step, I got one that says serenity on the other arm. So then I had these fucking billboards on my arms for AA. Oh, well, 12 steps, you know what I mean? So for 10 years that I couldn't look away from. Do you know what I mean? It was always there.
Right? Or I've always heard belly full of booze, mind full of AA. Mm-hmm. It's like when you go back out, that's what you're thinking of now. That's at least what I would. If I relapse, I know right from wrong. I mm-hmm. know better. I know I have the knowledge of the 12-step program. I walked through those steps. I know what it's about. So it's it wouldn't be enjoyable. I mean, even if I didn't, I don't know, I guess it was never, there was fun times, but I don't think there was mm-hmm. enjoyment out of it.
Yeah.
I didn't get much out of it. So what brought you to the rooms this last time?
I was starting to make some Let me be honest here. So I was like going on dating apps, and swiping right or left.
Yeah.
And I swiped right on this individual who appeared physically attractive. Now I look back, like talking about how fucked we are when we come into the rooms. Like my perception was so distorted. But anyway, I thought this individual was like amazing. We started talking. He's like, "Oh, I'm in recovery. I'm in a 12-step program," and I was like, "Oh, I'm in recovery too," and I wasn't. I was lying. And we like started talking and getting to know one another. And I was like, fuck, like I can't date this person and not be in sobriety and lie about it.
Right.
So that coupled with the fact that here I am, this kind of like in the field I work in, well-known substance use professional. I went out and got drunk one night and brought this guy home with me who had been shot in the face and was a drug dealer. So here I am now making these. I saw the trajectory of where this was going.
Right.
Because I'm the type of person that goes out and like gets drunk and like brings people home and makes bad decisions under the influence. So that happened. And then I met this individual like shortly after. And I went into the room solely based on the fact that on some level I wanted to be in a relationship with this person.
Yeah.
So that's why I started going to meetings.
Fair enough. I mean, you got to hold up your side, the side that you presented.
And so I started going to meetings. It turns out this person was very ill emotionally and mentally and spiritually. And thank God it got me into the rooms and got me into sobriety, this like motivating factor of wanting to be in a relationship with him. But through my recovery, I learned that he was a really unhealthy and actually a very unsafe individual who ended up going on and doing some pretty horrible things to another woman in sobriety. And I'm so grateful it didn't happen to me, as sad as I am that it happened to her. But like I got out of that relationship a few months after getting into the rooms.
And you just stayed.
Yes. He was kind of the hook that got me in on some level, but there was a piece of me also that wanted it.
Yeah. Well, listen, I came into the rooms because my sister was threatening to take my nephew away from me. Like I wouldn't see him at all. For a very long time, what kept me going to meetings is men. The way I would dress is nasty. These heels I couldn't walk in, and I'm trying to like impress these guys, and I would go to specific meetings because of these guys. It kept me going.
Yeah.
And then I realized the whole situation's fucked up. I'm trying to date, and these guys are like, what do you like to do? I'm like, fucking party, drink. And I don't do that anymore. So then I realized like, oh, I need to actually do something and figure out my hobbies and stuff. But yeah, no, men definitely were a contributing factor to the beginning of my sobriety. 100%.
Yeah. And I'm glad that like early on in my going back to meetings that like I developed a core set of women and like had a mentor who like supported me through this really unhealthy relationship and like leaving it, because I don't know if I would have been able to stay sober without it.
Yep.
I think that was really important. And I am grateful that he is a part of my story in the sense that he got me back into recovery, but I now look back and I would never date that person again.
Yeah.
It blows my mind I even did.
Yeah.
And maybe when we get off this call, I will tell you who, and you will laugh your ass off.
Oh my God, I can't wait. I can't wait. There's definitely individuals that I was with there's some stories. It's fucked up. It was bad.
Yeah, it's two unhealthy people trying to make something.
In early recovery.
Yeah.
And then, so I always see 12-step as like my comfort, right? So that's my like comfort blanket. That's where I'm going to go. That's my safety. and I was hooking up with men in the rooms, and now I'm getting cum on my comfort blanket. Like, it was not mixing well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then I realized, I'm like, okay, I can't sleep around with people in AA or in the 12-step program.
And I'm so glad. That was the only person I ever dated in the program.
Good for you.
My current partner, who I've been with for almost 3 years, is not in the rooms and is not in recovery. He doesn't drink.
Yeah.
I think I'm not going to identify whether he is an alcoholic or not. It wasn't working for him. So I'm really grateful that I found somebody who's like not a part of that community, who made a healthy choice for them, and it never is an issue. Like,
Yeah.
I have girlfriends in sobriety who date people who drink, and hearing the struggles they have, because most people are not honest about how problematic their use is, or they don't have insight into it. I'm just glad that that's not. And I don't know that I would ever, if I were to be single, which I imagine I will someday, like, that's part of, whatever. He's amazing. I'm not saying anything bad about him. I was just thinking about how he might feel if he heard this. But, like, I don't believe in the love of my life that I'm going to be with forever. Relationships serve a purpose for a period of time to teach us things about ourselves, and then we move on from them. So I imagine I'll have more learning opportunities in my life. But I don't know that I would ever date somebody in the rooms.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
It's too many issues. Like,
there is. I mean, even though I don't go to the rooms anymore, but like when I was dating someone in the rooms, this individual was an active alcoholic, saying that he's sober. You know what I mean? And my naive self was so consumed in like 12-step is the only way to get sober. And you have to follow these guidelines to stay sober. And he wasn't staying sober. So I was like, you got to go to more meetings. You got to talk to your mentor. Like, on the verge of reaching out to his mentor, like stepping over boundaries. It was like, I'm disgusted with myself type of deal that I ever did that, and I would never want someone to do that to me or like micromanage my recovery. And Dane's not in recovery, and I barely ever see him drink. He's never done any drugs or, so it's been a very healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Very enjoyable. I look at him and I'm like, how have you not done this? I'm like, do you ever think about it? It's like, you're the epitome of a normie. And like, it blows my mind. We have like whiskey up on our cabinet, and it's been there for months, maybe even over a year. I'm like, how do you not want to come home and just get shitty? Like, I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, because healthy people don't do that. Not even normal, just healthy, well-functioning individuals do not do that.
It explains so much. And it's weird that it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it's just like somebody buying a drink, and even to this day, it blows my mind that people buy alcohol and just leave a half of a drink on a table. I would never do that.
So that's called alcohol abuse.
Yes. Also, like, I don't think alcohol tastes good.
No.
That's not the point of drinking it. The point is to get fucking obliterated.
But Dane thinks the other.
Yeah.
Right? He likes the taste of it.
Yeah, that's weird.
Right? I'm like, nah, if I'm going to consume it, I'm going to black out. Like, there's no middle ground. I don't want to sit there and sip on it.
No, that's awful.
Right?
I remember, like, if I would ever just have, like, 1 or 2 drinks because I had to for whatever reason, I would be irritable.
Yeah.
And it would almost give me, like, I'd get a headache and have, like, this physical response where I would just feel like shit.
I completely understand what you're saying.
Like, I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, and then you're not even... I mean, you're using, so you're not in the moment, but you're not in the moment, and you're thinking of the next fix, where to go, when you're going to get it, leaving early because you need to consume something, and then you're by yourself, isolating, and just drinking by yourself. Oh, I don't I don't miss it. Back in the day, I used to, like, I'm never going to drink on my wedding day, or I can't just, like, go home and relax and have some wine. I fucking hate wine, so why was that even coming up? You know what I mean? But it's like, I missed it, and now it's just like, God, I don't miss the hangovers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my partner and I reflect a lot about that. Like, even like with the new year, if we go to a wedding or whatever, it's like we get to wake up the next day and not feel like shit.
Right. And you can remember the night.
Yeah. Oh, and you could be present in the moment during the experience.
Yeah. And not obnoxious.
Oh, yeah.
I get mean sometimes. Depends on what it is.
And
tequila, there's like a turning point for me. I'm first naked. I get physically hot, so I take off all my clothes. And then I become angry and just, ugh.
So you're an angry, naked mess.
Absolutely. 100%.
Did you ever have a lot of interactions with police where you were naked and drunk?
I've never. I only had... Well, I had an interaction when I graduated high school, and that was an underage drinking party. So I was talked to on the side of the road, and I was clothed, and then I got a possession charge, and I was clothed. I was in a mini dress, but I was clothed.
It's disappointing on
some
level.
I know. So I didn't have many interactions, thank God, but yeah, sometimes I'm like, I kind of missed an opportunity. I wouldn't do it now, but you know.
Oh.
So, in recovery, working the 12-step, like, what does it look like now for you? I mean, you don't work the 12-step anymore, but like more so of like, what was it like when you were working a 12-step versus now not working a 12-step, but still continuing your recovery?
I think, the work I did because I was probably the most active in the 12-step community for the first year of my sobriety. And I was going to meetings regularly, meeting with a mentor, working the program, did it all, the whole shebang. And then, but I think what was pivotal and what their literature talks about is that the purpose of the program is to develop a spiritual identity and spiritual practice. So for people who believe like you need to go to meetings every day or multiple times a week for the rest of your life, if that works for somebody, great. But for me, that's not what I want my spiritual practice to be.
Yep.
So I think the purpose in my recovery was that my experience in 12 steps was to develop a spiritual practice and a way of living that promotes recovery.
Yep.
And I've just carried that over into my life, where now it's almost like I don't have to think about it. It's just the way I live.
Yep.
And the way I live is in alignment with the practices and principles of those types of programs. It's just not as rigid or as like I'm not, it's not as intentional necessarily. Like I don't have a daily practice or like have to do this, and this every day.
Right. Make your schedule around a meeting.
Yeah.
Every day. Every day. I mean, I would give my life to AA. I have so much gratitude, and I would recommend it to anyone. It's just not conducive to my lifestyle now.
And I don't know that it should be like it or needs to be if you've grown and you're in recovery. As we grow and become in recovery, like more opportunities come into our life.
Well, it's just like the relationship that you were saying. They're going to bring you to a certain point. And then there's the next thing. And that was my background of AA brought me to a certain point. I realized that there's multiple paths of recovery.
Yes.
Then I went to Buddhist recovery, and then I branched out and, left programming and decided to, I don't use my job as a recovery coach as a staple to my recovery, but it enhances my recovery, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
and then the podcast, I'm still able to give back and be somewhat active in a way, but it's not a way that involves meetings and hearing the same story. And, I wasn't getting more out of it.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard everything multiple times, and I've done this, the steps multiple times. You know what I mean? I was kind of at like a plateau type of deal.
Yeah, and I think for me, like, there are things that I did early in my recovery that I do now, just in a different way. So, I've been involved in competitive bodybuilding for 2 years now. And there are ways that bodybuilding provides me physical, emotional, and spiritual growth. In very similar ways that 12 Steps did. And there are things that I do in my bodybuilding that are similar to what I did in 12 Steps. So, like, I'll give you an example. So, you talked about centering your life around meetings. So for those people who don't know, which is all of you, I'm a competitive bodybuilder. I competed in my first competition in August last year, won, surprisingly enough, and I'm now training to compete in April of 2022 this year. I'm going to do 2 shows. My goal is to go pro, okay? My life bodybuilding doesn't revolve around my life. My life revolves around bodybuilding. And bodybuilding gives me things that the recovery program gave me. So one, gives me like this physical health and well-being. That's an important part of being human. And so I take care of myself very intentionally. I lift 5 days a week. I make sure I get all the nutrients that I need. It provides me with an outlet for stress. While bodybuilding, you have to be present and mindful about the experience. It's not just throwing weights around, contrary to what you might see on gym fails or whatever.
Yep. You're
not just moving weight. You're having a connection with the muscles in your body, breathing a certain way, moving the weight in a certain way. It also provides me spiritual connection as well, like being in tune with myself. And also, like, in bodybuilding, I think people have this perception that bodybuilders are like these vain individuals who are just like fucking shooting tests and eating chicken and rice and throwing weights and acting like morons. It's not at all. Like, it's this practice, especially competitive, that requires determination and consistency. It requires me to constantly be in tune with how I'm feeling. Because if I'm not in a good place, I can't lift in a way that I want to. Or if I'm not in a good place about how I feel about myself, it's really forced me to look at my self-esteem and my body image issues, which has caused me to have some emotional growth. Because not only as a bodybuilder, where you're scrutinized for how you look, but also as a woman who's scrutinized physically, like, there's so many complexities and it brings up so much. So, like, I have a mentor, a coach that I'm connected to who guides me through this process, much like a mentor in 12-step programs does. My coach he's an IFBB pro, so International Federation of Bodybuilding. He has 30 years of experience. His name's Jose Raymond. He's out of Massachusetts. He has so much wealth and knowledge, and he's able to direct me about how to physically and emotionally and spiritually move through this process, much like a 12-step mentor. If somebody has 30 years of sobriety, I'm going to go to them possibly and ask them to guide me because they have all this wealth of knowledge and experience. He gives me my tough love.
And he's like a mentor.
Yes, and he's very, like, he don't fuck around. He just says it how it is. Then I have a trainer that I work with weekly who gives me guidance and direction in a much gentler way than my coach might. She's also a woman who sees things from maybe the same perspective that I do based on gender identification. Then I have friends who also bodybuild who I reach out to when I'm struggling and having a hard time, much like sober friends, you know?
Yeah, a fellowship.
Yeah, I have a fellowship in this community. People I've never even met before.
Like connecting on Instagram or something like that. Yeah.
Like when I was in my last prep, so for those who don't know, prep is when you are in a caloric decrease and you do a shit ton of cardio so that you can be lean as fuck and you can see all the muscles, right? So when you get on stage, it was so mentally and physically exhausting and just, I don't want to say painful, but it was really difficult.
Yeah.
And I would reach out to these women that I didn't even know, sometimes crying and being like, I just need to talk. Like, I'm going to go eat a fucking bag of cookies here soon because I'm so hungry. And like getting support from them, which was really important. It's very, all of the aspects are very similar.
Yeah, it is.
And I don't think, and I was saying this to you before we started doing this podcast, like, I don't think that I could be the level of competitor or athlete that I am if it hadn't been for the 12-step program. Like when I was in early sobriety, the thought of being uncomfortable was so overwhelming that I had used alcohol and drugs for years to alleviate that uncomfortability. Yep. And when I was ever uncomfortable, I felt like it was almost like I was going to die. But then when I got in recovery and started practicing moving through uncomfortability, I found, I'm not going to die. It's actually not that bad, and I can do this.
Right, and that's where you find the most growth.
Yes.
Is in uncomfortable situations.
And when you're bodybuilding or you're a competitive athlete, there's a lot of uncomfortability just because of what's required and asked of you. You have, especially bodybuilding, you have to get your body fat to a very low percentage. You know, I lost my period. I was probably at 10% body fat, which is very lean. And there were many things I got asked to do that I didn't want to do, just like in recovery. I didn't want to go to meetings. I didn't want to reach out to other people. I didn't want to be honest about what my experience was. But when you practice doing that, you actually develop this amount of growth that you couldn't have developed before. Yeah. You know, and so that transfers over into bodybuilding because there's many things that I get asked to do that I don't want to do. My internal being wants to be a lazy fuck who just lays around and eats whatever I want, but has a hot bod.
Amen.
You can't have those. You can't do both of those things.
No.
You can't be lazy and eat whatever the fuck you want and have a hot bod.
No. Yeah. Agreed.
It requires you to do stuff you do not want to do.
Right.
Every day.
Right. So has your mental health just blossomed? If I don't work out, I am not in a good place. I have to stay sane.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gone. I train currently 5 days a week because my coach forces me to take 2 rest days. Prior to working with him, I was training 6 days a week. I haven't gone a week without following my plan for 2 years.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that would be like not to work out.
Yeah.
That's unfathomable to me. It's just a way of living now.
Right. Right. Well, it's just like how we would make our schedule around a meeting. We now make our schedule around getting an exercise in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I only eat my meal plan. I eat the same 6 meals every day, and I've been doing it for years.
Do you get sick of it?
I get sick of certain things, and then I eat for intention, not for enjoyment. For the most of the time. But if I get sick of something, I just tell my coach, and he alters it for me. But, I couldn't imagine not doing that. When I try to think about, if I don't do this anymore, because I'm still new to it, I've only been doing it for a year and a half or so, like, how would I be in this world without eating the way that I eat or exercising in the way that I do? And I couldn't imagine.
You couldn't imagine going back to your old diet?
No. What, 2 meals, 1 meal a day?
Yeah.
And it was just garbage?
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine, like, not eating a structured meal plan. Like, just winging it. I mean, I'm a type A personality, so I don't wing nothing.
Yeah.
But I couldn't imagine. No.
Did you at first dread meal prep planning?
Yeah. Well, I didn't even know how to do it.
And your coach taught you?
Well, I got into bodybuilding probably 2 years before I got sober. I was extremely overweight. And I had this like pivotal moment where I went to button my jeans and there was a 2-inch space between the button and the hole and I couldn't get it closed and I just fucking broke down. And I was like, this is awful. I can't continue to do this. You know, more power to people who choose to live in their bodies in the way that they want to. I think that's the gentlest way I know how to say it.
Yep.
I also believe in being healthy. So I don't want to be fat or healthy unhealthy, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so for me, it just wasn't an option anymore. I wanted to feel comfortable in my skin. I also wanted to be healthy and reduce the risk of disease. And so I reached out to a trainer. I saw this woman in the gym. I had gone to the gym periodically, but was super self-conscious and like overwhelmed by going. Just like kind of like you wouldn't go to a meeting alone at first.
Yep.
It's all the same.
So I love the connection. I never thought of it before until you just said this.
So like when I first started going to the gym, I was like so anxious and like, self-conscious. And I saw this woman, kind of like you see people in sobriety.
Like, I want that.
She just looked amazing. I was strong and like fit and badass. And I was like, oh my God, I want to look like that. So I went up to her and was like, yo, are you a coach or a trainer? And she's like, yeah. So I started training with her a couple times a week. And it kind of just progressed from there. And she got me on a meal plan. And then I switched coaches for a multitude of reasons. And then learned more about meal planning and meal prep and like how the body works. And I didn't do it perfectly for a long time. I struggled. I think they like to say that sugar addiction is not real. I read that today.
What?
Some of these very extreme body liberation individuals say that sugar addiction is not real. I find that hard to believe because I had addictions to food.
I have a sugar addiction. And it's very real.
There's no way it doesn't alter your brain chemistry.
I feel fantastic when I eat it. And thereafter, I feel like shit, just like drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
Anyways, we have different beliefs than certain people, and that's okay.
Yes. So I really struggled with following a meal plan consistently for a very long time. And I was drinking during that time. And so drinking and bodybuilding are not conducive to one another.
Yeah.
So I didn't get consistent or good at it until after I stopped drinking.
So what got you into, so that was weight training. You weren't into bodybuilding then, just weight training. And then 2 years ago, you got into bodybuilding. Why?
So COVID happened and a member of the 12-step program owned a gym.
Yep.
And he would sneak us in during the pandemic when everything was closed down. So I was going there, and then the gym opened back up. There is a woman who is a trainer at the gym who is like 60-something years old, and she's fucking jacked. She's also in recovery.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, has her own history of all different types of things. She's just a survivor, and she's pretty amazing. And I developed a connection with her and started training with her, and she was a former bodybuilder. And I was training legs with her because I don't do legs on my own.
Thank you. I hate leg day. You saw my post today.
I did see your post. I hate leg day too. I've been paying somebody $55 a week for 2 years to work on my legs.
Oh my God.
Because I won't do
need
it myself.
I hate leg day.
No, it sucks. It's the worst thing ever.
And all you see on IG is girls doing leg day.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely hate it. Okay, glad we can connect on that. I'm glad I'm not the only one.
So I started paying her, and she was sharing her experience about bodybuilding, and I was like, hey, would you coach me to like train to compete in 2 years? So this was the end of 2020. Yeah. I said, will you train me to compete in 2 years? She was like, yeah. And she didn't charge me very much to coach me. So we started working together. And then in like March of last year, I was like on a whim. I messaged her and was like, yo, they just said that the Vermont show is going to be in August. Like, should I do it?
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, why not? Let's do it. So we went into prep, and she was my first coach. And I ended up winning, not because I was the biggest woman, because the other two competitors had 10 and 20 pounds on me, but I was the most conditioned.
Yeah. And
looked the best. So it's an overall, it doesn't matter how big you are, it's an overall thing. So I ended up winning, not even expecting it. So it was just like everything in my life just happens on a whim. There's like no forethought.
Yeah.
So, which is funny because I'm a type A person.
Yeah. I love how you, in the same breath, you just said that.
I'm so contradictory.
It's okay. That's all right. It's brought you to a very amazing spot in your life.
Yeah, I found something, and like, especially with the bodybuilding thing, I found something that I truly love.
Mm-hmm. That you're good at.
Yeah, and it's difficult, and it creates some challenges in my life at times that I just have to work through. But like, I'm consistent. I follow my meal plan 100%. I do all of my training. I do every fucking second of cardio. I do what I'm told.
Good for you.
And my hope someday, I mean, my goal is by 50 to go pro. So we'll see. That gives me 8 years.
You'll get it. You'll get it.
I'm hoping so. Fingers crossed.
So what are you doing now in between before you start conditioning? Is that what
I'm in prep.
You're in prep.
Yeah, I've been in prep since. So there's like usually 2 seasons. Off season, which is where you're building muscle and you're eating in excess of calories and training. And then prep is where you're eating less, doing more cardio. And
why do you want to be eating more? Like when you're not in prep?
Because caloric increase is how you put muscle on.
Okay.
So you got to eat more calories than you're burning in order to build muscle.
Okay. So you're eating more to get bigger muscles, mm-hmm. and then you're in prep to lose that body fat.
Yes, because you will
still
keep the muscle. Yeah, you will put fat on during your off season when you're eating more. You just will put some fat on your body, so you have to strip it all away. So I'm in the stripping process. The healthiest form of stripping. I was never a stripper before. I think I would have been, but
I know if we were not in Vermont. I totally would be. Okay, so you're stripping, and you're not stripping because you have booze in you and there's no cops around. Okay, you're not pulling a Shannon. Got it. And, like, what's the hardest part of it?
Of prep?
Yeah, of stripping.
The hardest
not
part.
Getting paid?
Oh, yeah, right? I'm definitely not getting paid for bodybuilding, this form of stripping, that's for sure. I think it really is that your life has to be centered around it. Like, mm-hmm. There is no room for error. My biggest fear is getting on stage and looking like shit. Mm. And I never want to get on stage and look like shit because I didn't do what I was told to do.
Right.
So there are people who will be in prep and they can't mentally take it, and they will go off their meal plan and like binge on food. Like my coach was telling me he was prepping this guy a week out before a show. The guy ate a whole bag of cookies and just dropped out of the competition. There are many people who cannot handle the mental aspect. And I don't think enough bodybuilders get credit for how difficult it is because people just see us flexing in the mirror or like wearing
Right.
barely any clothing, there is this whole mental aspect that people cannot tolerate.
Well, we kind of get some aspect of it, of the mental capability of getting yourself to a gym, to even work out.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, there's a lot of mental space that is filled. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then to add meals to it, to add that prep, to add that, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's the hard part, is like my whole life is focused around it. It's constantly what I'm thinking about. So like I get up in the morning, I have to eat my food, take all of my supplements, pack all my food for the day. Then I have to make sure to eat it all day while drinking enough water. Then I have to make sure I go to the gym and do 50 minutes of cardio.
Oh my God.
And so after this, I'm going to go to the gym, do 50 minutes cardio and train. And I'm going to do it all over the next day. So my coach calls it living the Groundhog Day.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what this is. If you want to be a competitor, you have to. It's a Groundhog Day. Every day it's the same fucking thing.
But it's a good same fucking
Yes,
thing.
it is.
Do you like cardio? Did you like cardio?
No, I hate cardio. I used to always say I was only going to run for my fucking life.
Yes, I still feel that way. Now, is your cardio just running, or do you incorporate other things?
So I have two types of cardio that I have to do. I have to do steady rate, which I do on the treadmill walking. And then I have to do interval cardio, where I have to go hard for a minute and then slow it down for 3 minutes. I will either do that on the stair climber, which I fucking detest, or I will sprint for a minute and then walk for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So I usually just do it on the treadmill.
Yeah. Now, has body dysmorphia come into play, or any form of eating disorder?
Body dysmorphia, yes. Probably the majority of competitors or bodybuilders struggle with body dysmorphia, not even including the other portions of our population, like women and stuff. Yes, it absolutely has. I really struggled with it probably like a year and a half ago. Now, mind you, this was after I had helped treat 2 clients in my private practice for body dysmorphia. So I had some knowledge about it.
Okay, good.
And I had like read the literature about it and learned how to treat it using cognitive behavioral therapy. So when I started to become aware of the signs of what was happening, so I was checking the mirror probably 30 times a day, constantly scrutinizing my body, weighing myself excessively. It was just always on my mind. This body dysmorphia is rooted in anxiety. So just constantly this perpetual anxiety. It became a really big problem. And so then I had to, because of what I knew, I did some work on it. But I struggle with it regularly. I mean, I think people look at me and can't tell that I work out. Like I feel, in my mind, I think I look like a stick figure, if I could conceptualize it in any way. I have no understanding. I'll get brief glimpses of like what I may actually look like, but I always think that there's room for improvement and that people can't tell that I lift.
So do you think your body dysmorphia has gotten better?
Yes.
What steps have you taken to get a better love for yourself and your body?
So there's a few things I do. One, I see a sports psychologist that I pay to meet with. She's a competitive powerlifter and was a former competitive bodybuilder. She lives in Georgia State. There really aren't any sports psychologists in the state of Vermont.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah. And so they provide kind of like mental health treatment for competitors. So genetics and talent are a small portion of how somebody wins. It's also their mental capacity. So if I'm not mentally in a good place, then I can't perform at the right level that I need to. So I started seeing a sports psychologist who I meet with bi-weekly every other 2 weeks, and we talk about this issue. I also do a lot of like self-affirmations and like reminding myself this is a distorted point of view. Like, you absolutely are not fat, because that's what myself and a lot of bodybuilders struggle with. There's always, the thing with bodybuilding is that your body is always scrutinized. Your body is actually the object
It's literally
of the sport.
Yeah.
There's an extreme amount of pressure to look perfect physically. Like, how would you not struggle? Anybody.
Right.
And then you're like constantly scrutinizing yourself. In the off season, when you're eating more food, you're like worried about putting on body fat.
Yeah.
And when you're in prep, taking the fat off, you're worried you're not lean enough or that you haven't taken enough off. It's a constant mind fuck.
Yeah.
So always having to be in check about where you're at and challenging the thoughts that come up. So I talk with other people that are also competitors, and we have like little therapy sessions where I'll be like, I look like shit, and they'll be like, no, you look great, or vice versa. And we talk about like, this isn't what you look like, and you are working hard, and you're not overweight,
Mm-hmm.
Or, and I talk to my partner and other people in my life about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always something
it's definitely something you're challenged with, but it must be helpful as the longer you go, knowing that this is part of the process. Like, you have to gain weight and you have to lose it. Like, that's just part of it, the natural cycle of bodybuilding. So understanding that it's supposed to happen might make it a little easier, at least I would think.
Intellectually.
Right.
But like, I follow bodybuilders that compete at the Olympia. So like, this one woman, she's been posting a lot about how she's had some issues with her body and how it's shifted over the time that she's been back in bulking season, where she's putting weight on, and how hard it's been for her. And like, what makes it more manageable is that people are being more open about the struggle. So this is still a taboo thing in the sport to talk about how you're struggling emotionally.
Absolutely.
And a lot of bodybuilders have actually killed themselves because of the lack of acceptance or like normalization of how difficult this is. And that's, people are being more open about it.
Right. Well, you get this idea that this person is big and strong. Their mind must be big and strong. Or like, you don't even think of it.
Mm-hmm.
This person is big and strong. That, like, how could there be anything else wrong?
Yeah, like, they're not human.
Right.
Like, being human is hard for everybody, you know?
It is.
And I see bodybuilders who post on social media like, if you can't hack it, you shouldn't be doing it, and this is difficult, and don't whine about it. And it's like, you know what? Fuck you. That's bullshit. Excuse me.
Right.
Like, people struggle. This is not supposed to just be a walk in the park. It's difficult for everybody. We need to normalize it and talk about it and support one another.
Absolutely.
Because we're all actually struggling with the same issues. We're just not all talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's a lot of stigma with anything you do. And people haven't been talking about the background of things. And now I feel like society as a whole is starting to talk more about things, with gender transitions or whatever. There's just, I feel like we're becoming a little more understanding and accepting.
Yeah, and I think there's a stigma in our society to talk about anytime we're uncomfortable, which is the root of, I would say, addiction.
Yeah.
Right, and it doesn't surprise me that a lot of people struggle mental health-wise and substance use-wise, because we as a culture don't like to be uncomfortable. We don't like to talk about things that are uncomfortable. We do not teach people how to work through uncomfortability, how to process their emotions.
Right. your ego also. Like, who wants to talk about it? Your ego is deflated. You know, you might be looked down upon or looked at differently.
Yeah, which is caused by the messages we're given by society.
Yeah.
I think if we were, if children were taught at a very small age, like what do we tell kids when they cry? Stop crying.
Yeah, right. You're fine.
Yeah, get over it. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Right there's the root of the issue.
Right.
Oh, hey, you don't actually know what you're feeling. You're actually over-exaggerating, and you need to stop feeling it.
Yeah, no. If someone told me to stop crying, I would beat the shit out of them. And I cry all the time. I miss my dogs, I'm crying. I hear my best friend sing, I'm crying. You know? So I couldn't imagine that. Yeah. I think it's amazing what you do.
Oh, thank you.
I'm envious of bodybuilders. I think it's fascinating. I physically get sick if I have to force feed myself. So that is definitely a challenge because I weight train. But I feel like I don't gain weight. And I'm on the like, I want to gain weight. I want to have fat so I can, you know what I mean? I can't eat enough calories to build big muscles that I want. I hope someday that shifts.
Yeah. With practice.
Right, exactly. I figured getting back into a routine of going to the gym and then focusing on, you know, adding more calories.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I envy you guys and what you do. I see it at the gym, and you know, Dane does it, and it's impressive. It really is. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think we're at a good point where we can start wrapping up. I know you have to go and work out. So
I do, yes, here soon.
So let's just go through our not so rapid fire questions.
Okay.
All right, what makes you happy?
What makes me happy? God, I hate these rapid. This has just started. I already want to stop. No, I'm just kidding. I don't like being put on the spot. What makes me happy? I think, I don't know, being just like having some hope and feeling like I have a purpose now and like feeling a part of something.
Yeah.
I'm unhappy a lot, you know, sometimes.
Yeah.
But
I do know.
Like just to have a different perspective and to have a different experience in life.
I like it. Okay. Who's your biggest influence?
Ooh. My biggest influence, I would have to say, is my trainer at the gym that I work out at. Her name's Kathy. She was my first coach. She has said some pretty pivotal things to me. Just these one-liners that have completely changed my perspective and experience.
Do you have one on the top of your head?
Sure. So one time she said, "Are you a liar?" I said, "No, not in sobriety, I'm not." Do you want to be? I said, no. She said, well, stop fucking lying to yourself and come to the gym when you say you're going to and eat when you say you're going to.
Wow.
Because I would always say, I'm going to go work out, and then the next morning I'd convince myself not to go.
Yeah.
And essentially that's lying to myself.
Absolutely. You're not
She's
showing
like, you
up
can't
for
be honest
yourself.
to be other people if you can't be honest with yourself.
I love it.
And it completely shifted my perspective.
Yeah.
Since she said that, I've never missed a workout or a meal. I don't know why. It just clicked.
I was going to say it clicked when it clicked. You could have heard that like 3 years ago and it wouldn't have. You know, it's at that right time and right place when you hear something.
Yeah.
Do you have another one? Because I really like it.
Oh.
I know you're on the spot. If someone asked me that, I'd be like, I have no fucking clue.
I'm trying to think what else she might have said to me. Oh, no.
That's okay.
That was like the most meaningful. There's more of things that she said. You know, just like us talking about and I've heard this not just from her, from other people, but like people who have addiction issues are able to do things in sobriety in a different way than people who don't. So I have a tattoo artist, Jason Tooth.
He works at my shop.
Who I love. He tattoos a lot of people in sobriety.
Yep.
I do not believe he identifies in that way himself. But he's just a beautiful human being. And he will consistently talk about how people who have addiction histories tattoo differently than people who don't, that they can experience pain. Funny that we don't think we can experience pain, emotional pain.
Right.
But in our sobriety, we can move through many difficult things.
Yeah.
If we've done the work.
I still don't like getting tattooed. And
No,
that's
it's
my
awful.
job. It's my fucking job, and I absolutely hate it. It's a pain that I don't like feeling. That's
When people are like,
100%.
oh, does it hurt? Of course it fucking hurts.
Every time. Or piercings. Does that hurt? I just popped a hole through my body. Of course it hurt.
And if you say you fall asleep during a tattoo, you're a liar. And you can come find me and I will tell you that to your face.
Yeah, you can't lie to yourself anymore.
I do not believe that. So just like her and I talk a lot about, she's witnessed like all these different women and people who've bodybuilded, but done other stuff as well, who did these amazing things and were able to overcome these really difficult things because of their experience in recovery.
I was going to say, or just like with something in general, like with your bodybuilding, I feel like you have accomplished a lot, which gives you that confidence. I feel like brings it to something else. If you're going to graduate school, like you've already accomplished this, it gives you confidence that you'll be able to accomplish something else.
Yep. And we're not little bitches.
We ain't no.
No.
If you could give one piece of advice, what would it be?
I just want to say that Nike has the best slogan.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Absolutely.
Like to me, it's just like, I never knew what I was capable of in sobriety or like with bodybuilding or anything in life. If I did not try something, I would just assume that I couldn't achieve it or I wasn't capable.
Right.
I will never know, and I've never known what I was capable of until I just tried something. And that doesn't mean I'm going to do it perfectly or it's going to come with great ease. It's going to take practice, but I will never know unless I do it.
Right.
So it's just like, just fucking do it.
Absolutely. So if you just do it now, you're not wasting time. Whereas if you're like, I would like to do that, but what are people going to say and whatever, and then 2 months go by and you've just wasted 2 months of your life. If you just fucking did it, you're not wasting any time. It's like dishes. If you just fucking did them, they'd be done.
Yeah.
But now you're wasting all this fucking energy not doing it.
And people will say to me like, oh, you're so motivated. Like you work out, you eat the same thing, you work so hard. How can I develop that motivation? Motivation is the desire to do something and doing it. I don't have motivation. I have determination, which is I don't want to do something necessarily, but I just fucking do it. It's not about cultivating motivation. If I'm going to wait to be motivated, I'm going to be waiting forever.
Right.
It's being determined and pushing myself to do something and practice doing it to where it no longer becomes a conversation in my head and it just becomes routine.
And then it becomes enjoyable.
Yes. That was another thing Kathy taught me. I just remembered it.
Is just do it?
It's about developing determination. Like, I would have a hard time getting out of bed and going to the gym. And she just said, don't even have the conversation with yourself. Just get up and do it.
Right. Don't snooze.
Yeah. And eventually it becomes just a part of your routine, which is what has happened.
And can we bring it back to sobriety? You're questioning getting sober. You're having a hard time getting sober or whatever. Just fucking do it.
Yeah.
Just get both feet in that fucking boat and just do it.
And you might make a few mistakes on the way.
Absolutely.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
But you just keep pushing forward.
Yeah. Just do it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Because I have that mindset too. You know, just fucking do it.
Mm-hmm.
What's one affirmation that you wish you told yourself more often?
You are capable of doing anything you set your mind to.
Do you doubt yourself?
The operative word being capable. Yes, I do. At times. That still happens.
Are you proud of how far you've come?
Oh, absolutely. I was a fucking poor kid on the streets, you know. Like I said earlier, I was shoving heroin in my vagina and bringing it across state lines. And now, you know, my life is completely different. So yeah, it's a 180.
I love it. Last question. What's something you want to accomplish?
So, as I said earlier, I would like to get my pro card for bodybuilding. That's a big goal. And I also would like to get a master's degree in social work, which I've applied to Boston University to start in May.
Is it going to be remote or are you moving?
Yeah, remote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's all online. I mean, no one in my parents didn't graduate high school, so.
Mm-hmm. You're just paving a new way.
Hopefully. Well, I don't know what my kids are going to do, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, you're an inspiration to all of us, that's for sure.
Oh, thanks.
All right. Well, that's all of my questions. And I just want to thank you again for coming. And this has been a fantastic episode.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right. We out.